Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I am your host, Teri Wellbrock, and so happy to have with me today Brian Hyman. And he is a yoga and meditation teacher and author. I just found out his book has just come out. And so he's going to talk about that. And we had a little chit chat about the writing process before I hit record. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Teri.
I'm so excited I'm excited to have you here, but I told you right before hitting record that just a fan of your work, and you your work speaks to my heart because of my journey with my mom. Tomorrow's the 1 year anniversary of her death, my birthday. As in typical mom fashion, I think she held on until she was like, I'm going to wait till her birthday and then I'm leaving. But it was such a journey through her addiction and really her recovery in her 80s. Like, she gave up drinking in her early 80s, which is just crazy. And I tell people all the time, hashtag never too late.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of similarities. My mother was a huge part of my recovery journey, my healing journey. She passed away 2009, and that really was my wake-up call because at that time I was deep into my addiction. I was drinking, I was an alcoholic, and seeing how fragile life was when she passed, I really had a moment where I was forced to look at what am I going to do with the time I have left on earth? Because there's people out in the world like my mother who want to live and can't. She had cancer. She wasn't going to beat the cancer. And I had the gift of life and I wasn't doing anything with it except wasting it. And I was stuck in this active addiction. And 8 months after she passed, I got sober and I've been sober ever since. It's been 14 years. So every year when that date comes around, when it's my sobriety date, I celebrate not just my sobriety, but the gift that my mother gave to me. It was one last teaching she gave to me before she passed was to get out there and live life.
Yeah, well, kudos to you. I know I would sing my mom's praises, and she would she would tell me, well, it's a day by day thing, Teri, because truly there wasn't a day that goes went by that she wouldn't say, I really want to have a drink. And so, but that was her personal journey. And I know everybody's different, right? With how they come to this realization that they need to make some changes. So, do you? So, as a yoga and meditation teacher, do you focus primarily on those with in either active addiction or recovery?
In my professional life, I've been working at a prominent treatment center here in California for 12 years. I've been leading yoga and meditation groups. So I facilitate groups, and in that setting, in treatment, I'm working with patients who are detoxing, who are in early recovery. And so I have that experience where it really is a gift. It's a blessing. And it's also a great reminder for me. I see this every day, Monday through Friday, each week, year after year. I see people, the disease, the addiction, it's alive and well, whether we like it or not. It's out there. And it doesn't care who you are. If you're rich, poor, old, young, if you're sick, healthy, black, white, it doesn't care if you're educated or not. It's just going to literally try to destroy your life, either slowly or it'll just do it fast. And so the people I work with are professionally anyone who's in any stage of treatment in a facility. Now, personally, I've been sober a while, so whoever I can work with who wants help, I'm willing to help if they're willing to do the work. That's the issue is I had to figure out for myself when I got sober, no one's going to get sober for me. I have to do it myself. I have to do the work. I have to go to meetings. I have to go to therapy. I have to read books. I have to meditate. I have to pray. No one else can do that work for me. It's an inner job. It's an inner journey. And so if anyone is willing to do that work, I'll meet them halfway, but I can't walk through the fire for anybody. They have to do that. I'll walk beside them. I'll escort them. I'll guide them if I can. And I do that work through the book I just wrote, some interviews I've done on podcasts. I have some courses on Insight Timer. So that's the way I've been connecting with people around the world. so that I can sort of take the message as far and wide as it can go. And most importantly, to take the shame away from it, to take the stigma away from it. You know, if I can put myself out there, my name, my face, my book, my content in a way, if I can get this out into the world in a way where those who are hiding because they think it's embarrassing to be an alcoholic, those who are, are locked away in their homes and they think they're broken or they're not worthy of getting a new life or changing or healing or transforming. That's why I do the work that I do, is to say, you are worth it. You are loved. Everyone deserves a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, and you can do it. All of us can do it. We're going to do it together.
Oh, yes. And I say my heart hugs yours because I think of my mom, and there was this aha moment that I had. I was visiting my son who was living out in Colorado, and he had taken us to Estes Park, and we were standing on a mountaintop in Colorado, and I got a phone call from the hospital in Cincinnati where my mom lived saying, "Hey, your mom's been here for 5 days detoxing. She's ready to go home. Can you come pick her up?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually on vacation in Colorado." And they said, "Well, somebody needs to come get her." And that was my moment when I said, "No, no, I'm done. I'm done." And I just stopped. I stopped going in and saving the day. I stopped going in and cleaning up the mess. I stopped it all. And it was a moment for her that I finally, uh, I guess, just allowed her to be her own hero. She was the one that said, "Oh, nobody's coming in and cleaning this up for me." And so she started to do the therapy, and she stopped drinking, and she cleaned up her own mess. And that was what it took for all of us to say, "No, we're not doing this anymore. We can't. It's killing us." So
Yeah, that's empowering. It's really beautiful to hear. That's what we call in the world of recovery. It's setting a healthy boundary. It's taking care of yourself and at the same time allowing the person that you care about to step up for themselves, to rewrite their story, to be the hero of their own transformation. They get to be the author. They have the pen in hand. They get to rewrite their story. No one else can rewrite it for them. And if we rob someone of that opportunity, if we keep swooping in to save the day, what I've learned is it's almost like you're robbing somebody of a chance to really do something that's incredible. And you don't want to take that from somebody because it's not going to count if I do that for someone else. They have to do it for themselves for it really to hold weight.
yes, amen. Again, I walked away for 3 months. I cried every day for those 3 months because I felt like this horrible daughter for abandoning my 80-something-year-old mother. But once, one day, 3 months later, my phone rang and I looked and it was her. And for whatever reason, I answered. And she said, "Teri, I dropped a quarter and it went underneath my dresser and I can't get it." And I knew then she was asking for my help or just asking to be reconnected. And I said, "Yeah, Mom, let me hop in the car. I'll come on over. I'll see if I can get that out for you." And then from there, everything was different because you're right. I put that healthy boundary in place. So I'm really glad you brought up the healthy boundaries, as difficult as it is, especially growing up in a household with an alcoholic parent. I had no idea what a healthy boundary was, and finally did it in my 50s.
Yeah, we become enmeshed. One of the sayings we'll hear in recovery is the family is sick, not just the alcoholic, the entire family unit. The everyone in the home is sick. It is a addiction. It will touch every person's life. It'll touch the parents, the kids. It'll even touch the animals. If you go into a home where there's an alcoholic who's active or an active drug addict, even the family pet is going to seem sick, down, depressed. You can feel it energetically. The entire house is going to feel different. So it's not just the person who's drinking or using drugs or acting out or whatever the thing might be. Everyone around them in their orbit is going to be affected. And the good news is recovery is also collective. So if that one person gets well, everyone around them is going to get well as along with them. And that's why it's so beautiful to have programs. There's programs for family and friends, and there's therapy and support groups for family and friends of people who are suffering. Just like when my mother had cancer near the end of her journey, myself, my sister, and my father, we went to a caregivers support group because we didn't know what we were doing. We were trying to, just walk her through these last stages of her life. And so we were distraught. We were grief stricken. And so we had a group. And so she did the best she could with her therapy. She did physical therapy, speech therapy, she did chemotherapy, she did radiation. And then we, on our end of things, did the best. We went to talk to other family members, just talking about medicines and clinical trials, and we're trying to figure stuff out too. Um, so it's a beautiful thing. But it does come back to the person who is dealing with whatever they're dealing with. They have to
Yeah.
want to do the work, because usually the people around them are usually doing the work, want it more for them than they do. And so we have to meet in the middle somewhere.
Right. Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the caregiver that you and your family, your dad and your sister did that, because that was the book I was telling you before we got on air. Was it's called The Caregiver Chronicles, that I had written a chapter for, about my journey with my mom in those last days of her hospice. So speaking of books, your book is Recovery with Yoga.
Recovery with Yoga, and then the subtitle is Supportive Practices for Transcending Addiction.
Nice. Awesome. And so I know I've done yoga myself in various forms throughout the years. And so is it um, a guide of how people who are in recovery can utilize yoga?
Yeah, that's a great description. It's the title can be misleading, especially in our Western culture. Most of us think of yoga as a fitness class at the gym, or the physical poses, and a lot of people will say almost automatically, "I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible. I don't have good balance. I don't know how to speak Sanskrit." We have all these excuses, and because we have this preconceived idea of what yoga is. So the book itself, there's only a handful of poses, and that's not the thrust or the main focus of the book. It's what you talked about, is how to use yoga as a way of being, a way of living. It's the philosophy, it's the breath work, it's the mindfulness, it's the mudras, the mantras. It's the essence of yoga, specifically the principles that we'll find in yoga, moral codes, self-disciplines. And so I focused on pairing those things with universal principles. So the book is just simple, universal themes, timeless ideals. So it's things like honesty, compassion, vigilance, um, presence. I'm just flipping through now. Punctuality, accountability, transparency, consistency. So there's 30 of these principles, and I talk about each of these principles and align each one with a yoga concept or practice, and speak to the person who may be suffering in a way where it can be relatable, accessible, contemporary. And that's the neat thing, is these principles and ideas, they're ancient. Yoga goes back thousands of years, but they're just as relevant today. Honesty is honesty. So the first chapter is about honesty. And so, whether we're talking about honesty from something in the yoga scriptures from 3,000 years ago, or honesty today, like, how do you honestly feel? Honesty is honesty. So, um, I just use the principles to guide me through the process. And so we have the result now. The book just came out 2 weeks ago.
The timing of this is so awesome, because we started talking months ago, and got you on the schedule. So I'm so excited that it just launched. So I'll be sure to put a link in show notes, and I'll do a separate post on all my socials too, because so keep an eye out for that, folks, if you're following me on Facebook or LinkedIn, if we're connected that way. Um, I know for me, again, I've done sometimes at the gym, or sometimes in private studios, or sometimes outside, different practitioners and friends and acquaintances who have done yoga classes. But I always found it wasn't so much the poses, because you're right. Like I would be like, my legs were shaking and I felt like I wasn't holding it right and so forth. But and I know I can't pronounce any of the words, but it was at the end when we would lay very, very still on our backs and that very quiet, like that was almost like when I would get downloads of information, or it was just very prayerful and meditative and peaceful. And that's when I found so many, I don't know, answers in those quiet, mindful moments. So I'm so glad you brought up that it's so much more than just holding a pose.
Right. And that's what really attracted me to the practice itself. And it is a practice. It's a lifetime thing. There's no finish line. It's not a sport. There's no end to this journey. Just like recovery. You don't get 5 years sober and say, "Oh, I'm done. I got my 5 years. I can go back to whatever there is." It's a lifelong, and it's a practice. It's something we just keep doing one day at a time. Yoga's one breath at a time, one pose at a time. And what I started to get from it, just like you talked about, was the poses were okay. I could do most of the poses, some of the poses. I was pretty athletic when I started doing yoga, but what I was getting that was more important, that was really helping me, especially in my early recovery, was, like you mentioned, laying down in a final pose and just feeling peace, just starting to find I had some intuitive thoughts, some memories would come up. I'd be in a different pose, and all of a sudden I had some ideas about what I could do with my life, my purpose. Some content, creative types of ideas would come to me, and that's where it really started to feel like, wow, this. I used to tell friends, and I still say it these days, my yoga mat just became a magic carpet. I would get on that mat and just take the ride, and all of a sudden I would just know the next thing to do about this thing over here and the next thing to say to that person over there. Like these things would come. And then I wasn't long before I realized they were coming because I was focusing, I was concentrating, I was staying still, at least on the mat. I was staying present, which were things I wasn't doing all that often before I started practicing yoga. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was running around the world thinking about the past, thinking about the future, not concentrating. I thought I was pretty dialed in. But when you get onto the mat, it's like a Zen practice. When you sit on your cushion and you just sit there and you just sit there and you just sit there, you're going to realize, oh, wow, you got a lot of stuff going on inside your head. Wow, was that always up there? I didn't know that. And you're going to process and you're going to be with all these things. And that's what started happening was on my yoga mat. I started to really look at things like depression and sadness and grief and anger and impatience, and I started to really identify these things, and I would heal the things that needed to be healed personally within myself, and I would work on transforming the things I needed to transform within myself. And then this stuff comes off the mat with you out into the world. You're different. The way you act with people, the way you speak with people, the way you interact with the world is different. It's really interesting. I think for some people it is just a yoga class, and I don't have an opinion either way. If it's just a fitness class for someone at the gym or a way to lose weight or get tone or fit, awesome. At least they're practicing. But for me, it really became this spiritual practice, a really wonderful place for me to come home to myself.
Yeah, what a beautiful way to put it, for a way for you to come home to yourself, because it is when our mind, when we're always busy, 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 going, going, going in the past, in the future, but not here in the now, in the moment. And that's one of the things I learned too was um, you said the words to just be with it, I think, or something along those lines, like just sitting with it. Because it can be so scary. I mean, I know that's what my mom was diving into vodka for, was to silence all of those ghosts that were haunting her from her childhood and the trauma she had endured. Um, and once she started to do some really deep dive healing work and just being able to be with it and talk about it, it really started to shift things for her too. Yeah, she wasn't doing yoga, but she was. You said prayer earlier. She would use prayer quite a lot, which is a meditative, meditative thing. Prayer, deep prayer.
Yeah, that's how I actually started to pray. I when I got sober, it was a suggestion to pray and meditate, and I didn't have a prayer or meditation practice at that time, but something about the mindful movement and the conscious breathing of being on a yoga mat, to me, I likened that to a form of prayer. That was my devotional way of honoring my body and connecting to something beyond myself, higher than myself, and that that opened the doorway to this spiritual dimension that helped me figure out. I think this is a prayer. If I just bring my hands together at my heart and just bow my head, that's prayer. It was Meister Eckhart who said, "If thank you is the only prayer you know, that will suffice." So even just being grateful, that's prayer. Um, and the meditation, even the entire yoga practice can be a meditation. There's no rule that says you have to sit cross-legged somewhere and count to 10 or focus. Your your way of moving through your asanas, your poses, your yoga practice, that is a form of prayer. That's a form of meditation. And so a lot of a lot of these terms, I I I I had a chance to really start to find new definitions for things that I thought, because I thought prayer and meditation was this old thing, like you had to go to a church or a temple or a synagogue or a mosque and do it the way your grandparents did. And in my recovery, it was really encouraged, find a higher power of your own understanding. And with yoga, find your own practice. Find your own way to meditate. You don't have to be like this Zen master or that Buddhist monk. And that's really helpful and for healing as well. There's no one way to heal. There's no, okay, read this book, go to this therapy, you'll be good. We all have our own process and there's different stages and there's different time lengths that it takes. Sometimes, my mother's been gone a long time now. It's been just over 14 years. There's still pieces of that. There's still some grief there. There's still phases or stages of that where um, it's something we still move through. It's part of the process. It's an ongoing thing.
Yes, absolutely. My dad passed in 2009. And so yeah, I'll still have moments when things like I see a cardinal or something, and I still go, "Hi, Dad." And I mean, and it's just a moment where I'm like, "Oh, I miss your jokes. I miss your laughter." And I was cleaning up some old videos the other day, and I happened to come across the last video I had of him in the hospital with my family, but I couldn't get the sound, and I so wanted to hear his voice, and so I was just really having to work through that moment because I wanted to hear my dad's voice so bad, but I just couldn't hear it. Yeah. And so me trying to just sit and be with it and recall it in my mind was really kind of a prayerful act because I was just sitting and being with the memory of him. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me see how we're doing on time. Oh my gosh, it's already 6:29. Crazy. So I certainly wanted to give you an opportunity to touch upon anything that you would want to share or leave people with any final thoughts before we end.
Well, since the podcast is the healing place, correct?
Yes.
So the healing place, what comes to mind for me when I think of that is for me personally, and this I think it could be and probably should be, but I'll just say could be an individual thing. My healing place is coming home to myself. So the process of addiction recovery, it's an inside job. And so the healing place for me is my heart. I mention this because these ideas, these concepts, the idea of coming back to myself or coming home to myself or opening my heart. When I got sober, I these were foreign concepts to me, and it really took some time and some mental gymnastics, if you will, for me to kind of sort of start to even try to figure out what that meant. And what it comes down to is this, and it's neat because now I get to be a teacher and I get to create courses and I get to be an author now. I have a book out. But I want to share this. The real work is going to be within the heart of the person who wants to do the work. There can there can be an amazing teacher, they can't do the work for you. There can be an amazing book out, it's not going to do the work for you. The person who wants to do the work, they have to come home and use their heart and do the work. So all the best teachers, gurus, mentors, sponsors, therapists, even podcasters. All of us who are out there trying to save some lives and help some people. All we're trying to do is get people, in my opinion, back home to themselves so they can do the work. We're here to guide, to point, to show the way, to send some light out into the world. And so that's why, yeah, I was really happy to connect with you because I feel your podcast, your show, what you talk about, it's really helpful. I know there's a lot of people, and I talk with a lot of patients. I've been working at the same treatment center for more than 12 years, so I've talked with thousands of people, and there's a lot of people that are in dark places who aren't ready yet to find healing, but they are listening to things like this. They are hanging in there just long enough to find a video or a book or a podcast or something. So definitely please keep up doing the work that you're doing. And anyone else out there who's in this, in the trenches with us, keep it up. There are people who are listening, and they tell me. I hear about it quite often. I get emails randomly years after I'll work with a patient. They'll say, that class that we did, it was really helpful, and um, so we have no idea what we're doing, but we're just doing it anyway, and I think it is working. I like to believe that the tide is turning. So everyone out there, come back home to yourself. You deserve it.
What a beautiful, beautiful message. Got a little teary-eyed for a second because it's just so true. And I love when you said we don't know what we're doing, but we're just gonna keep on doing it because it's the truth. Like me doing this show and having amazing souls like yourself who come and join me and shine your light of hope into the world through this podcast. To me, that's just such a gift. I feel so blessed to be able to do this, and it is true. I hope that it resonates with somebody, and somebody finds you in your message through this platform and says, "That's the one I've been looking for." like there he is. I've been waiting for Brian. Yeah. So thank you. It's just well, one, just such a gift to have you here with me. So thank you.
Oh, thanks again for having me. This was fun. Like you mentioned, we had emailed each other back and forth for a while, and the timing was really very auspicious, very interesting because the book just came out, and so we were able to mention that. I
Yeah.
think, pretty deep in the writing process the first time I reached out, or maybe just finished the manuscript. So I think my mind is a lot clearer. So you got me while I'm still sharp.
Awesome. Woo. All right. Well, so how do folks connect you? Where do they find you?
My website, brianhymanyoga.com, and I'm online, social media, and Insight Timer. That's where I have audio courses and a lot of free guided meditations. So you could find me there as well.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again. And everyone, thanks for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye bye. Hey, everybody. Teri Wellbrock here. Just wanted to thank you again for being a part of this healing space and my hashtag Hope for Healing journey. Thank you for sharing, liking, inviting others to join, listening in. You've really helped this show blossom. It has now been downloaded in 136 countries and is in the top 2% globally out of 3.2 million shows, which is just amazing. And it's all because of you and your tuning in and inviting others and sharing and liking and loving. And your reviews on Apple really help too. My goal is to hit 100 5-star reviews by the end of the year. And I am closing in on that. So if you are listening in on Apple or Apple Podcasts, please go and rate the show and leave a review if you absolutely love it. And I would be most appreciative. Also, if you would like to receive my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, please be sure to go to teriwellbrock.com. It's TERI, just one R, WELLBROCK.com. And I have a gift to send you for signing up for that monthly Hope for Healing newsletter. Plus, there are many other resources listed on that page, including a resource library. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.